I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm excited to talk about the fourth and final season of Ozark with music supervisor Gabe Hilfer. So, Gabe, since we've never spoken to you about Ozark, I actually want to go all the way back to the beginning and ask how the musical backdrop slash DNA for this show came to fruition.
Sure, yeah. So good to meet you. And let's get all the way to the beginning. So I got a call on the pilot, like when this was just, a twinkle in the eye of the creator and showrunner. And we were mapping it out and trying to figure out what it would sound like. To be honest with you, it evolved over the process of the pilot. We had, the score by Danny and Sonder is like a huge tonal element to the show, and the depth and the gravity and the uniqueness of their music and their sort of like some of their like found instrument vibes were really a special part of it. And then the music, the coolest part, or one of the coolest parts, is that Chris Mundy, who's the showrunner of Ozark, was a former music journalist. Right. So like he's real into music, really like cares and knows music, and so it's been lovely, really intellectual conversations about songs and what they mean and how we're framing everything. And the two tones that started off really early were, and I mean, Radiohead's probably my favorite band, but I will be honest with you, Jason Bateman called me and said, he's a producer as well as a star of the show, and he called me and he said, I'm gonna throw a name out to you and I want you to tell me if this is impossible. And I was like, oh, like bracing myself for it. And he said, Radiohead. And I was like, not impossible. Like, if it's cool and it's worthwhile and it's good, then they are known to be like open and supporters of sync. And so the Radiohead and the vibe that helped embody in the first episode was really, I think, helped set us off in a tone that we were going to be like doing. I mean, Radiohead's music to me is really heavy and dense and makes you think. And it helped really frame the scenes with Wendy in her old house that we played it in. And that was one of the touch points, I think, where the musical tone started off as saying like, we are going to be a serious show. And then the other part is, Ruth, one of, kind of the breakout musical stars of the show, is like her love of hip hop throughout. And that was some trial and error. Like we were trying to figure out what the heck she would be listening to early on. And sort of irreverent, like just she doesn't give a shit, like, and really would, what is her music? Like, is it punk? Is it hip hop? Is it, and then so we tried some early 90s or mid 90s hip hop, and it just like worked so well, even though she's too young to have grown up with it. It worked really well, and we all like loved it. And then it became the recurring theme. And then then that's my music I kind of grew up on. So then we just got to have fun and like throw out crazy ideas that you don't get to use very much in every project.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And then to sort of build on it, heading into season 4 then, and we'll get into some specific song choices in just a second, but knowing that it was going to be the show's last season, how much of an impetus was there to add a musical exclamation point to these individual characters and to this story in general?
It was a big focus, I think, for the writers, even, right. So Chris Mundy, again, I don't want to like just make it gushing about Chris Mundy here, but he's a super collaborative guy. Not everybody like wants to, some writers have a singular vision and it's like my way or the highway. And Chris was an incredibly just collaborative, smart person. And he called me while he was writing the season, and he said, I'm breaking this episode. I'm like developing the story and the plot lines for this episode. That's going to be the first episode of the second half of season 4, episode 8, because they split it in 2. And in it, and he pitched the concept to me, and that Ruth would be driving, and he wanted one album for her to be driving to, and then she puts it in, and it like becomes her entire mindset for the thing. And originally it was a different artist. It was Notorious B.I.G.
Oh, wow.
And or that was, he didn't write, he was like, I'm thinking of doing Notorious B.I.G. And I said, oh, that's cool. But he asked me what I thought, and I said, it's cool, but we've used a few Notorious B.I.G. songs in the previous episode, in the previous seasons of the show. So would you be open to like hearing, other ideas? And he was like, yes, of course. But like, what could beat that? Because obviously, Biggie is like the icon. And I was like, well, what about Not Illmatic by Nas, which is, and he was like, it's been a while since I listened to that record. Let me check into it. Let me listen to it again, and I'll call you, after I've checked it out. And so like a week later, he called me and he was like, perfect. This is exactly what we're going to do. But the fact that this was like thought about in advance in that way, where even at the very, in the stages of before the scenes had even been written, he was talking about how the music was going to get integrated into it, really showed the deliberate focus of music into this season. And and then not just that, I mean, there was the Jerry Rafferty, like when Marty gets out of the car and is having a fight with Wendy and beats the living hell out of the driver. Yeah. Or like the Sam Cooke, which we bookended in the season because it starts when they're playing in the car and then it ends when they get in the car crash. And then and then the other hip hop song that really, another moment, is They Reminisce Over You by Pete Rock and CL Smooth, which is classic 90s gem. And I had pitched it actually for something earlier in the season, and Chris said, I love this song, but I want to hold it for later. And there's a specific moment I want to bring it in, like, in sort of Ruth's, last drive up to her trailers. And I was like, oh, okay. So we held it and we had some time to play with it. But so to answer my super long-winded caffeinated answer to your question is, there was a focus. Like, we wanted music to be, it's not a musical. We don't use hundreds of songs. It's not that kind of thing. But when we do, they're very specific and deliberate and intentional, and they're talked about and discussed behind the scenes. And then we try to make the magic happen.
Yeah, that's great. And, I actually want to zoom in on some of the moments or scenes or song choices that you mentioned, because we get our first song straight away in the first scene of the season, which is a flash forward to the series finale. Before they have an accident, the Byrds are listening to Sam Cooke's Bring It On Home to Me in their car, which is basically about a guy who wants his lover/spouse to come back home. So how did that song actually tie into the narrative purpose / symbolic meaning of this car accident?
Well, there's a lot of things about it. I mean, first of all, Sam Cooke has probably, arguably the sweetest, most like just beautiful voice in the history of rock and roll, in general. But it's a super awkward moment in the car. Like the kid, because we flash forward when we first hear it, the real timeline of when that song should be hearing is when they're in the car. Jonah's not, Jonah's like essentially like hates his parents. Everybody is it's an awkward silence. Wendy's like trying to make conversation. She's like, oh, I love his voice. And the lyrics are there. Like, the lyrics are sincere. The lyrics are like tender, and it makes you almost, lulls you into a sense of security, only to be immediately interrupted by car swerving and like impending, and you're not sure if they're going to die. Nope. because the way they did it, I mean, like, it's a massive car accident, and like, they could easily have died in that scene. And I think that the gentleness, and then the fact that the song is still playing after the car crashes,
exactly,
is like a whole other part of it. It's really a juxtaposition of like this sweet, beautiful song, his voice, the lyrics, the whole context of it, and then this like brutal carnage of twisted metal and question of, is like anybody dead or hurt, so that was, I think, the intention there.
Mhm. And I like that you mentioned how the song sort of it plays, then it stops when the car crash or car accident actually happens, and then it starts playing again, and then kind of blends into the opening credits of or title card.
Part of it playing over the title card. I mean, a lot of that is when we're noodling in post production, and we're like sort of seeing like how long the scene is going to get cut and where we're going to place the title card. Because as you noted, like there's usually a scene or something. And then the title card doesn't the episodes don't just like start with the title card. So where those come up is always up for debate and make it's always a very it's fluid. It's fluid about that and like how the song played, because there's one way that's in the script where it plays and it plays in a car accident, but then how it's interpreted specifically, like where it would stop. Would it be playing? Would the sound be mutilated or like manipulated in a way after the car crashes? All of those things are things we get to play with in post-production. So that was not necessarily like prescribed from the first moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you've already highlighted episode 8, I'm actually going to jump all the way to episode 11 and talk specifically about the road rage scene at the end, which is just as dramatic as it is insanely funny. I mean, you have this outburst of rage from Marty, but it happens in this ridiculous setting and just spirals out of control. And, part of the reason it is so entertaining is the choice to play I Saw the Light from Todd Rundgren over it. Why that particular song, and was that comedic undertone something you were aiming for?
I mean, yes, because the it's almost like the soft rock nature of that, like with it's the soft rock nature of that, which makes it almost like innocent, yacht rocky kind of vibes. It feels very like, it feels very authentic to what would be playing on the radio there. And then it also helps really highlight the feud between Marty and Wendy at that point. Like she's kind of going behind his back and she's making deals with Navarro's sister, and like he's like starting to smell a rat and he doesn't want to be, like they've bifurcated and they don't necessarily see eye to eye anymore. And so that playing and then her saying like, oh, I fucking hate this song, it's because it's almost like he's liking it and it's like calming him down. And the thing about that scene that I think works so well is that for however many seasons, for 4 years, we've seen Marty be this like incredibly cool, calm, collected guy. Like from the first time, the most stressful thing ever, when he's almost like murdered, when they find out he's been stealing from the cartel in episode 1, he is completely fluid and can talk on his, he talks his way out. He goes to the Ozarks based on like a pamphlet that his business partner gave him, and he is just able to freestyle his way out of this crazy, like tough situation. He is constantly calm under pressure. He constantly feels like the most, who you want to be with if you are in an emergency. And I don't have every episode memorized, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time we see him like lose his shit in this way. And he, obviously there's 4 seasons of pent up rage that get expressed on the other driver in this car, and it's gratifying. But then he it's funny because like Jason pointed this out recently when I was talking to him about this, is that despite the fact that he goes off the handle and goes completely apeshit, he walks off calmly and like realizes he lost himself, and he like quickly centers himself again and like walks off right into the camera to be like, almost like breathing, like I've lost it and I need to maintain my composure and I need to get it back together. And weirdly, I Saw the Light, not weirdly, it helps almost with that. Like it works at the beginning and the end, and then it's so opposite of what you're seeing in the middle that the contrast is so distinct and stark that like somebody getting just like pummeled to that song is almost funny. Because because then it comes back and it almost is like the calming energy he needs as he like walks away at the end.
It definitely is. It's a great song choice, and it's such a great scene for all the reasons you mentioned, to see that rage, and it's such a comedic scene. And, you know, I'm actually going to circle back to Ruth now and talk about her car ride to death that you already mentioned in the series finale. Because for Ruth to play They Reminisce Over You from Pete Rock and CL Smooth, a song that is inspired by tragedy, the death of their close friend, I believe, seemed so fitting for this scene. But I know that the choice to use it was actually a bit more nuanced than that. So could you elaborate on it a bit?
Well, the choice to use it was like, you know, it was because it was Ruth. It was because it was like, it's one of the few I mean, I've had to try to thread this needle before in other projects where we're trying to find like a really authentic, nostalgic hip hop song that isn't corny, isn't talking about like back in the day or something like that. You know, it has, you know, because hip hop was, it's a broad genre, but it has a lot of like angst, and it has a lot, especially in that era, has a lot of angst and a lot of aspirational qualities to it, and a lot of you know, crime related stories or love related, not a lot of like legit feelings of nostalgia in this way that we wanted to embody. And I pitched this song earlier in the season. I think I mentioned this, and Chris was like, no, you got to hold that back. We got to hold that back for the end. That's the song I've had in mind the whole time. And we, you know, it was the perfect synergy of a song that was authentic to the type of music that we have set up for Ruth, which is like, you know, 90s hip hop, and also tonally to be, you know, what we wanted to try to get across in terms of like, it's kind of like the end of an era of song. Like, you know, when you hear those horns and you hear that song, it's just such an iconic thing for anyone who like heard it at the time. Like that would come on, and it's just like it immediately takes you to a specific feeling, and that is, I think, what both Chris and I were really excited about with that song.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, not much later, we come to our final song, Love and Happiness by Al Green, which plays over the end credits after that surprising cut to black. Again, it's absolutely not the song you would expect here, but its use just makes the entire scene or the entire ending more interesting. So how long did it take for you to settle on it, and why play it specifically over the end credits?
Well, we knew the way that we wanted to play it. We knew we wanted the action to play out. And then once it went to black, we wanted a song to kick in. And that song, whatever it would be the exclamation point that the entire series is wrapped up on. We tried a lot of songs here. Because when you do a song that's over black like that, you're not beholden to any specific tempo. You're not beholden to any specific tone, really. It's kind of dealer's choice. Like, do you want to leave people off with something like we did at the end of season 3 with Ooh La La by Run the Jewels, which was like kind of hit you over the head. Then it was like, you know, we could have done something kind of like that, or you know, it could have just been like a holy shit kind of thing. Or we could like gently land them into more like, you know, place. And I think at least what I get out of it, and this is the song we settled on, and look, Al Green is best soul artist around, but one of the things that you get from that is that it's a little bit of a happy ending moment. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like as much as there's been the Langmores and the Casino and the Navarro crime family and like, you know, and all this kind of stuff, it's always been about the Burbs, and it's always been about the family unit, and it's kind of about, you know, they came into the Ozarks, they fucked it all up. You know, dozens of people died, money's been laundered, people have been, you know, murdered, assassinated, like every type of gruesome death imaginable. And then you know, and then ultimately their family unit was not necessarily impacted by it. And so I think that it was a sweetness and like almost to me anyway, it was like a chef's kiss, gentle reminder that this is about the birds. And like, after it's all said and done, like they kind of came out unscathed. Mm-hmm. I mean, there'd be a lot of psychological trauma, I'm sure.
But they still got away with something once again. And that's how everyone I've spoken to from the show has described that ending. And what I like about the song playing over the end credits is that people are absolutely going to catch it, because absolutely no one expected it to cut to black, especially in that moment. And I'm sure most people let the credits play for quite a few minutes. I certainly did. So,
well, one of the nuances of working on shows for Netflix is that generally speaking, you have to sort of opt in to watch the credits. It immediately prompts you to watch the next episode. So for an end credit song in any of the episodes within the body of the season, the audience, we're just going to assume, probably only sees the credits for like the first 20 seconds before it immediately flips you to the next episode, and unless you choose to watch the credits. But for the finale, it's not like that, so for the season finales, we've been conscious of that enough to know that like this is going to linger a little bit longer with the viewers, and to be able to hear it and hear Al Green is always nice. I mean, like, I listen to Al Green regularly just when I need like to center myself. So it's kind of amazing that we got to feature his music like that in there.
And on a final note, we've obviously talked only about a very small sample of song choices from this season. So is there a particular song choice, scene, or episode that we have not discussed, but you are particularly proud of and would like to highlight before we wrap things up?
In the whole series?
The whole series, or this season in particular?
I mean, most of the ones I feel like that we've talked about for this season, I kind of feel, I have a list here because I try to come prepared. The other one that I kind of liked was the moment where we're playing the song Energy by Sanford the Great in 411 when Ruth is on the plane. Mm-hmm. Now that's the episode that Laura Linney directed. The same one where Marty beats the hell out of that guy. And we had a great time with that too, because like Ruth's never been on an airplane before, so I don't know if we ever really specifically mentioned that, but like through her actions and through her like her naivete and her lack of experience of like what the hot towel is for, or she's at least never sat first class before, and finding a song that played through that also lands us into Miami, that was a fun one. I mean, historically, the Run the Jewels one, the Ooh La La at the end of season 3 was a real favorite of mine, because we brought Run the Jewels manager in and they played us that song before it was released. So it was fun to be able to like have that be something special for us. But there've been so many. REO Speedwagon playing live was a fucking hoot. We had to like, they were so fun and so game to come on set and be part of the episode. And it's just been a great ride. I mean, once there was a little bit of momentum and the show had fans and took off, it was a much easier sell, because then people were like, "Oh, I love that show. Like, of course I want my music involved, and that's always a fun feeling to have, because, some shows are good, some shows are not as good. Some shows are great, but they don't get an audience. And like a lot of things need to coalesce and be perfect for like the show to be high quality and for it to become like a zeitgeisty thing where like the world is watching it and paying attention and following the characters. And it doesn't happen every day. And when it does, it's special and it's fun to be a part of it.
I can absolutely imagine. And, on that note, congratulations on this final season of the show. It was an amazing one. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it with me today. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.